Okay, hello everyone, and welcome Rosalind here in this debate where we are going to debate the 4-day work week. And I think the topic really doesn't need a lot of introduction because everyone knows what we're talking about. And I think here we're just going to see what are the pros and cons of this 4-day work week. And Rosalind is on the pro side, so she's a big supportive of the 4-day work week. And in this debate, I will be against it. So why don't you go ahead, Rosalind, and introduce your first argument?
Oh, thank you, Evelyn. Well, I think my first argument probably centers around productivity. I think that's quite a common argument, which people have maybe heard before. In the UK here, the Green Party is proposing the 4-day week, and they're talking about the flexibility and the productivity that it brings. So how it really pushes organisations to streamline processes, and we can have a better standard of living, well-being, and work-life balance. So the productivity gains from technology should really be benefiting everyone. But over the past couple of years, it seems like people have been working harder, but we need to work smarter. And a lot of companies trialed the 4-day week at the beginning of COVID, and I'm pretty sure that a lot of people have really benefited from it, and they've said that their productivity has really boosted. And I guess when we have 5 days, we find ways to work for 5 days. So I think I think the 4-day week will make us more productive as a society as a whole.
Yeah, I mean, I'm pretty sure that there are, many studies already around this, and I also read quite many. But I feel that, most of these studies leave out really like practical questions of the study, because of course there could be some productivity boost on the short term, but I feel that none of these studies actually tackle these questions that will people be required to work the same amount of time? Because we're working now somewhere between 35 to 40 hours a week. So if we have 4-day work weeks, it doesn't mean that we're gonna still work the 35 to 40 hour, or we're just gonna, work less. And if we're going to work less, doesn't mean that we have to fit our work into that shorter period of time, in which case I don't think this 4-day work week will work for everyone, because not everyone likes to sort of pack up the work, because that would mean that we have less breaks, and then it can lead to a lot of increased stress, etc. So I feel that this is a very like maybe personal matter. Maybe some people really like to do this Pomodoro technique where they just work and they can just fit it into 4 days, but maybe some people actually like to fit it into 5 days. So I feel that maybe this could be one problem. And another thing I was thinking is that, does it mean that if we work less, do we get less paid, or do we get the same salary? None of the studies talk about this either. So I feel that this could be also a quite challenging question of this 4-day work week, that do we get the same salaries? And if we get the same salary, do we get the same holidays? Because in many countries, the holidays are also counted after the days that you work. So I feel that there's a lot of challenging questions here.
No, I totally agree with you, Evelyn. I think that the challenge is really how to implement the 4-day week and how we can really translate this work arrangement into a change in legislation. And off the back of what you were saying about people working like long hours and stuff, I do feel that people enjoy their work and they see a sense of fulfillment, but I don't really think that people enjoy those long hours. So in terms of the flexibility of a 4-day week, it's not like a total shutdown. And obviously the question of how organizations would implement that would be over a long period of time, but it is that flexibility which comes with it. And I do agree with your point that I think what people are doing with that day as well is really important, like how they're using it to learn or to rest, maybe to improve in terms of their creativity or their productivity in other ways. But as society as a whole, which kind of you were pointing at, I think the benefits of this argument aren't only for the businesses and the workers themselves, but also society more generally. The extra day will have a positive impact on leisure and tourism and all those industries, because people will maybe be investing in the hospitality sector. So that kind of ties back to what you were saying about salary and stuff. And I think the people that implemented it during COVID, some companies tried it where they didn't like reduce the workers' salaries, and it still had a really positive impact. And I think that's also to do with like redistributing wealth. So it is proven to like boost unemployment as well, because shorter working hours can distribute work more evenly among people. Obviously, that's like very dependent on the sector and the individual, what industry they're working within. But I think working a shorter week leads to lower unemployment because it redistributes wealth and salary, which is obviously a really positive thing. And this also ties on to cost, I guess, as well, because I was like seeing surveys that were saying that businesses that have already adopted the 4-day week were making savings of almost £92 billion a year. So it also reduces the business costs of office overheads and things like that, which is obviously a massive pro.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, that can be definitely that for some businesses this works. But as you mentioned that, you know, there are of course many industries that might benefit from this. But in my opinion, there's also a lot of industries that will actually not benefit, but will be maybe harmed in a way. I was just thinking that, okay, if we implement this 4-day work week generally, then does it mean also that there's going to be 4-day school week? Because, you know, then we would have to give teachers also the liberty to decide if they want 4 or 5 days to work, or you know how universities would kind of adapt to this, for example. And then if we implement this 4-day school week, that is quite like a lot of sort of days taken away from studying for kids. So it's also kind of I would say like maybe a challenging question here. But then I was also thinking that, does it like really make us productive? Because of course many studies point that it could make us more productive. But then I was thinking, let's say that I'm a very good employee and, you know, I'm able to fit my work into 4 days, which means that, okay, I'm a very productive employee, right? But then couldn't I just take on more work or maybe more responsibilities and then, you know, live up to my full potential? Because if I just work 4 days, I sort of kind of limit myself and then just fit my work into that. But then maybe on that extra day, I could do something more for the organization. And then I think on the long term, maybe for organizations, this would be very beneficial, you know, that they would let their employees just live up to their full potential instead of limiting them into that 4 days. But it's just a, you know, like a personal little bit of extra question I was thinking yesterday. But what do you think?
Yeah, no, I think it's an interesting one. I think again it ties back to the idea of like what people are doing with that extra day is so important, because it means that you can like feed into those skills. And I guess it's not that idea of shutdown where everything stops then and then you just like lie down in bed for the rest of the day. You can use that day to learn and train and like reskill in different ways. And I think it's almost like resisting hustle culture, like the idea that we need to constantly be grinding, constantly be working, that our value is tied inherently to our work. And it's allowing people like that space to rest, and also redistributing that work-life balance, because ultimately like life is not about work, and a lot of people obviously need to work longer hours. It depends on like the individual situation and the industry, as you said, but I think it kind of like resets our mindset and reshifts our priorities in a way. When you mentioned schools, yeah, I agree with that in terms of like it would be a question for schools and other industries. Another social group I was thinking about were like women. So the 4-day week could help with like gender equality in working environments and maternity leave, also with like burnout culture and like the mental health diagnoses which are on the rise at the minute, retirement coming later. Perhaps the 4-day week is actually more sustainable long term if we're like thinking long term visionaries, because obviously burnout culture is massively affecting the rise of mental health illnesses among young people especially. So in terms of that, I think it's interesting, and clearly there's like a need or a demand for it as well. Like we've been seeing a lot of it on LinkedIn in terms of talent acquisition. Apparently 63% of businesses find it easier to attract and retain talent with a 4-day week. So I think job postings which are advertising a 4-day week could actually attract more applications, which shows that it's actually like a societal demand and something which we should be thinking about more because people are really wanting it.
Yeah, I mean, of course, no doubt that, I mean, I would be also very attracted to organizations that, have this 4-day work week. There's no doubt in that. And of course, I agree on your point that it, of course, reduces stress and of course, maybe would have a lot of mental health benefits. But then going back to the point where we were talking about how it maybe would impact economy, maybe just one point to raise here is that I feel that for the general public, for the general consumers, the 4-day work week might actually be more expensive, because it would mean that we actually implement one more day off, so one more no working day, right? So we would have 3 weekends. And in many countries, for example, in Finland, the services are more expensive on Sunday. Like if you go to a buffet or like lunch, it's usually more expensive on a day off, because the people who work there, they have to get more salary on those days. So we would actually end up paying more for things on more days, and maybe we would even get less paid for our work because we just work 4 days. So maybe it would be more expensive for the general public or the consumers. And I was also thinking of public services such as banks and libraries and government offices. So how would that be implemented over there? So if people just work 4 days, would there be maybe these places more crowded, or what would happen? So I think these are also interesting questions to think of.
Definitely. I think it ties to that like idea of circular economy where people, yeah, maybe are investing more in like meals out or the cinema, whatever, but then it goes back into funding the broader economy. So like redistributing the wealth a lot more, which benefits like society as a whole rather than specific individuals. And another point to do with society like as a collective again is climate, so people traveling less has a better impact on the climate, on commute time. Countries with shorter working hours and working days tend to have lower ecological footprints, carbon footprints, carbon dioxide emissions. So I think that the working one less day a week could reduce your carbon footprint by a significant amount, which is obviously something really important to think about, not only for people but also for planet.
Yeah, definitely. There's a very good point, and I don't think that I have any arguments against that, because I agree to that. So maybe we could agree that there's obviously a lot of benefits, and I'm totally for the 4-day work week. But we could also maybe see that there's maybe it's not for all the industries, and maybe it's not for, or maybe there is a lot more questions to it to be answered before we sort of just move on with this. But
I agree. And
yeah,
we
I
have to
think.
think about how we can
Yeah,
motivate people in the best way.
yeah, and of course we have to balance it always. And I would say that maybe it's a good idea to allow people to also have some sort of flexibility in this, that they could maybe, in certain businesses, they could maybe choose if they want to work 4 days or 5 days, or some sort of like flex their hours in a way that they can, have a day off or something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, but thank you, Rosalind, for this quick debate. It was really nice.
It was really nice to speak to you too, Evelyn. Thank you so much.
Thank you.